Hi. I'm Professor Ryan Murray of Towson University's Electronic Media and Film Department. Welcome to the final screening for experimental film and video. Experimental film is a parallel universe, an alternate history of filmmaking and moving image art. Like scientists conducting experiments, experimental filmmakers take risks, make discoveries and arrive at unexpected results. Pushing the boundaries of aesthetics and concept, experimental filmmakers break the rules. These movies aren't made to tell a story or entertain, but rather to find bold, challenging new ways to make meaning and beauty. Join me in celebrating the moving image art that these Towson University experimental filmmakers have created. Item 79 uses glitch aesthetics to create a garbled video transmission in which extraterrestrial anthropologists debate the purpose of a human artifact. Indy is a lyrical visual poem dedicated to the daily life of a dog. A relaxing, poetry-filled afternoon with Mr. Edwards couples poetry readings with a cathartic performance.
Good afternoon. My name is Mr. Edwards. I was asked to come here to speak to you all about poetry. I've had a love of poetry from a very young age. I'm going to share with you some poems that bring me a sense of peace in times of need. I hope you enjoy. Had he and I but met by some old ancient inn, we should have sat us down to wet right many a nipperkin. But ranged his infantry and staring face to face, I shot at him as he at me, and killed him in his place. I shot him dead because he was my foe. Just so, my foe of course he was, that's clear enough, although he thought he'd list, perhaps, offhand like, just as I, was out of work, had sold his traps, no other reason why. Yes, quaint and curious war is, you shoot a fellow down, you treat if met where any bar is, or help to half a crown. Hear the sledges with the bells, silver bells, what a world of merriment their melody foretells, how they tinkle, tinkle, tinkle in the icy air of night, while the stars that oversprinkle all the heavens seem to twinkle with a crystalline delight, keeping time, time, time in a sort of runic rhyme to the tin-tin tabulation that musically wells from the bells, 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 from the jingling and the tinkling of the bells. Hear the mellow wedding bells, golden bells, what a world of happiness their harmony foretells, through the balmy air of night how they ring out their delight, from the molten golden notes, and all in tune, what a liquid ditty floats to the turtle dove that listens while she gloats on the moon. Oh, from out the sounding cells, what a gush of euphony voluminously wells, how it swells, how it dwells on the future, how it tells of the rapture that impels to the swinging and the ringing of the bells, 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 of the bells, 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 to the rhyming and the chiming of the bells. Hear the loud alarum bells, brazen bells, what tale of terror now their turbulency tells, in the startled ear of night, how they scream out their affright, too much horrified to speak, they can only shriek, shriek out of tune, in a clamorous appealing to the mercy of the fire, and a mad expostulation with the deaf and frantic fire, leaping higher, 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 with a desperate desire and a resolute endeavor, now to sit or never by the side of the pale-faced moon. Oh, the bells, 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 what a tale their terror tells of despair, how they clang and clash and roar, what a horror they outpour on the bosom of the palpitating air, yet the ear it fully knows by the twanging and the clanging how the danger ebbs and flows, yet the ear distinctly tells in the jangling and the wrangling how the danger sinks and swells by the sinking or the swelling and the anger of the bells, of the bells, of the bells, 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 and the clamor and the clangor of the bells. Hear the tolling of the bells, iron bells, what a world of solemn thought their monody compels, in the silence of the night how we shiver with affright at the melancholy menace of their tone. For every sound that floats from the rust with their throats is a groan, and the people are they that dwell up in the steeple all alone, who the tolling, 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 in that muffled monotone, feel a glory in so rolling on the human heart of stone. They are neither man nor woman, they are neither brute nor human, they are ghouls, and their king it is he who tolls, and he rolls, 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 a paean from the bells, and his merry bosom swells with the paean of the bells, and he dances and he yells, keeping time, 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 in a sort of runic rhyme to the paean of the bells, keeping time, 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 in a sort of runic rhyme to the throbbing of the bells.
Leave Women Alone is a found footage film that stands against the erosion of women's rights and documents the history of protest for abortion rights.
Housewives, in the beginning and in the end, although we have to be much more than that in the world now.
The decision to have a child should not be a matter to be decided by the male-dominated legislatures.
Now, at this very moment, Roe v. Wade remains the law of the land. But let's talk about what a world without Roe looks like. Women in almost half the country could see their access to abortion severely limited. In 13 of those states, women would lose access to abortion immediately and outright. Those Republican leaders who are trying to weaponize the use of the law against women, well, we say, how dare they? How dare they tell a woman what she can do and cannot do with her own body? How dare they? How dare they try to stop her from determining her own future? How dare they try to deny women their rights and their freedoms? 3 years ago, when I was a United States Senator, I asked a question. Can you think of any laws that give the government power to make decisions about the male body. And the response, you'll recall, was essentially, can't think of any. So when we look at the big picture, those who attack Roe have been clear. They want to ban abortion in every state. They want to bully anyone who seeks or provides reproductive health care. And they want to criminalize and punish women for making these decisions. At its core, Roe recognizes the fundamental right to privacy. Think about that for a moment. When the right to privacy is attacked, anyone in our country may face a future where the government can interfere with their personal decisions. Not just women. Anyone.
Could you give us some of your political beliefs?
Kill everyone now. Condone first-degree murder. Advocate cannibalism. Eat shit. Filth are my politics. Filth is my life. Take whatever you like.
Yeah.
Limbo is a found footage and glitch-based work that pairs historical footage with classic guitar riffs from heavy metal history. Peluche is a psychodrama narrative in which pet ownership may not be what it seems. This film is a found footage montage that contrasts the poverty of Harlem in the late 80s with the uncaring prosperity of U.S. pop culture and politics at the time.
All right, fellow Americans, this is the 34th time I'll speak to you from the Oval Office, and the last. I'll speak to you from the Oval Office, and I'll speak to you from the Oval Office, and I'll speak to you from the Oval Office.
We live in a peaceful, prosperous time.
Containment has worked. Deterrence has held. Principle has paid off. Principle has paid off.
2, 1, SRB ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of STS-20.
Privileged to present the 1989 championship trophy to the University of Michigan and the head coach, Steve.
We must guard against gambling our nation's security on what may be a temporary aberration in the behavior of our foremost adversary. We must guard against gambling our nation's security of our foremost adversary.
Jerome Robbins' Broadway is both a musical legacy and a theatrical leap. Lovely, wonderful stuff.
And the Oscar goes to Dustin Hoffman for Rain Man.
Montana, touchdown, and that's it. The game is over. San Francisco has won Super Bowl.
We know what works. Freedom works.
We know what's right. freedom is right.
Can you get to that? Tell me where's that? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Finality takes us on a walk through the woods that becomes introspective, trance-like, and hallucinatory. CNN versus Fox uses two simultaneous feeds of cable news footage to demonstrate the differences in the way networks cover major social and political events.
How would a bullet go through here, out of his eyes, and
what I know is that there were three different forensic investigations that were done that showed that he was shot in the front. Everyone in the country was told that he was shot in the back, that he had his hands up and said,
how many black men are in jail right now? You know how many black men are in jail right now for nothing, because the Department of Justice failed them? You know how many black men are in jail right now? Don't tell me, because they closed the book on it. We're okay.
Away from the officer.
Show the public the truth,
gets out of his
and if you want to know the truth,
Michael as he's shooting his weapon.
Okay, I don't know why you got so hung up on what happened, whether he was trading pot or trading or stealing something. It's completely irrelevant to the outcome of this case.
Freddie Gray was struggling to make a
protests in
life for
Baltimore
himself
turned violent over the weekend after police admitted they might be partially responsible for the death of a 25-year-old black man named Freddie Gray.
People in the
And
neighborhood
now
say
one of the most
he didn't grow up
influential
here. He'd been
African
here for
Americans
about
in
a year
Congress
or
is
so.
trying to
They
play
said he came
down
and went all the
those
time.
causing the
always
violence.
said hello, seemed like a nice guy.
In
they
the
say
end, there was
they never saw any
a
sign
few
of any
people
trouble.
who said, we're going to turn this city down, we're going to close it down. And the next thing you know, we had a few people, mainly from out of town,
Freddie and his
to come
siblings in a
and
home
to start
so
beating up
squalid,
on
they
police
want a
cars
settlement
and
from the
throwing
landlord
all
over
kinds of
lead paint
projectiles. But
exposure.
the fact
It
is
is an
that for
issue
the
in
most
older
part,
homes here that can
it
cause
was
brain
it
damage.
could have
But you did have the one definitive interview. There was an eyewitness from day one, and you interviewed him, I believe it was immediately thereafter, or pretty close thereafter, and your eyewitness was adamant in saying that he saw Trayvon Martin on top of George Zimmerman beating Mr. Zimmerman, which would be consistent with A, the broken nose, the lacerations in the back of the head, and the grass stains that apparently were on the back of his shirt.
We know there's one other witness, too, that says that same exact thing. So, yes, there are questions.
So that would then be two witnesses that corroborate at least the story that Trayvon was beating up Mr. Zimmerman. And I would argue, and you're a prosecutor, that, barring any new information we get, and we say that sincerely because I think we are going to learn new facts in the case, that, at least on the surface, seems to corroborate Mr. Zimmerman's story.
Yeah, Brooke, as of this point, the indication we had was from U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar tweeting about charges for the three officers. I can now tell you that based on our review of court records that have just posted, all three officers that were seen on that video have now been charged. We're talking about J. Alexander Kuhn, Thomas Lane, and Tu Tao. Court records indicate have been charged with aiding and abetting second-degree murder. Now, based also on those court documents, we see that the fourth officer, who had previously been charged with third-degree murder, we're talking about Derek Chauvin, court records indicate that his charge has now been elevated to second-degree murder. So we can confirm that according to court records here from the state of Minnesota, all four officers, Brooke, that were involved in this incident involving the death of George Floyd have been charged by authorities.
Josh Campbell, thank you so much for that. And Elliot and Ellie, I want to bring you back in, but let me just sit on that
Let's
for a
take
second.
that standard
George
to Minnesota
Floyd
this morning, where, as you know,
died.
overnight, the
Was
protests
killed,
were getting more violent. There's
week
been
ago
looting.
Monday.
The
And here we
president, to
are
his credit,
on
very
a
quickly
Wednesday.
said, look, the
And you now
FBI and the
have
Justice Department, I
all
want
four
them to get on
officers,
top
right?
of
They were
this.
immediately
But the
fired.
protesters are looking at what the
And
local
people in this
police have
country were
done, and they
calling
haven't
for
arrested
justice, and
anybody.
they want
Timelessly uses found footage and a peculiar combination of aesthetic markers to illustrate the way our society seems lost in trying to solve its gun violence problems. Content warning, images and discussion of gun violence.
Well, I think you have to look at both the terrorism challenge that we face abroad and certainly at home.
Second winter of the war. On the Western Front, the Germans were preparing a new offensive. Its code name was
Guns play in delivery.
the state of Verdun's defenses had at last penetrated to general headquarters at Chantilly. And the French were
standing outside the neighborhood bodega. Suddenly, one of them opens fire and it's pandemonium. 5 will be hit with gunshots to the chest and back, arms and legs. Amazingly, no bystanders were wounded. But so
Since gun reforms, you have to act. You can't wait. Take the firearms first and then gun.
I don't need to wait another minute to take common sense steps.
After reaching historic lows in the
mid-2010s, gun violence rates in America have gone up in recent years, and they remain higher than in some other parts of the developed world. There are hundreds of laws and regulations that restrict Americans' access to firearms. Yet according to some advocates, social science research shows that a few more simple, common-sense laws could make a significant difference.
The notion that gun laws don't work, it's not borne out by the evidence.
And the evidence and data is in. Gun safety saves lives. It's not something we assert, it's something we can prove over and over.
Two Rectangles and a Dot uses glitch and found footage to address contemporary digital culture aesthetics and the question of living in a simulated reality.
There's sort of a philosophic concept that a sufficiently advanced civilization will be able to create simulation. Yeah, maybe you've answered this before? A simulation.
I've had so many simulation discussions, it's crazy.
Okay. So, because
in fact, it got to the point where basically every conversation was the AI simulation, AI/simulation, AI/simulation conversation. And my brother and I finally agreed that AI/simulation, we would ban such conversations, AI/simulations, if we're ever in a simulation. AI/simulation. That was like
a simulation.
AI/simulation.
That's like a simulation. Simulation. So the theory follows that.
Otherwise,
maybe we're in the simulation.
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 AI/simulation. AI/simulation. Simulation.
Have you thought about this?
Simulation. We would ban such AI/simulation. We would ban such AI/simulation. Simulation.
Simulation.
AI/simulation. Simulation. We would ban such conversations. Virtual reality. I think here's, like the strongest argument for. We would ban such conversations, AI/simulation, for us being in a simulation, probably being in a simulation, I think is the following. Virtual reality, AI/simulation. Otherwise, that 40 rectangles in a simulation. That was what games were. Simulation. We would ban such conversations. Now, 40 years later, we have photorealistic 3D simulations with millions of people playing simultaneously, and it's getting better every year. Otherwise, soon we'll have virtual reality, augmented reality, simulation. We would ban such conversations. If you assume we would ban such conversations, virtual reality, any rate of improvement at all, virtual reality, simulation, the games will become indistinguishable from reality. Otherwise, just at Pong, like two rectangles and a dot. Like two rectangles and a dot. Otherwise, like two rectangles and a dot. AI/simulation. Like two rectangles and a dot. AI/simulation. Like two rectangles and a dot. Otherwise, virtual reality. Like two rectangles and a dot. Virtual reality, simulation. We would ban such conversations. That was what games were. Like two rectangles and a dot. Now, 40 years later, we have photorealistic 3D simulations. Otherwise, with millions of people playing simultaneously. And it's getting better every year. Like two rectangles and a dot. And soon we'll have virtual reality, simulation, augmented reality, simulation. If you assume any rate of improvement at all, then simulation. The games will become indistinguishable from reality. Simulation. Like two rectangles and a dot. Even if that rate of advancement drops by simulation 1,000 from what it is right now. Otherwise, like two rectangles and a dot. Reality. We had Pong. Virtual reality. Otherwise, we had Pong. Virtual reality. We had Pong. Virtual reality. Simulation. We had Pong. Like two rectangles and a dot. So given that we're clearly on a trajectory to have games that are indistinguishable from reality, well, otherwise, we would ban such conversations. We had Pong. Like two rectangles and a dot. AI/simulation. Like two rectangles and a dot. We had Pong. Like two rectangles and a dot. It would seem to follow that we had Pong. like 2 rectangles and a dot. We would ban such conversation at Pong. Like 2 rectangles. Tell me what's wrong with that argument.
Is the answer yes?
Like 2 rectangles and a dot. Otherwise,
this is a game.
Like 2 rectangles and a dot. Simulation. We would ban such conversation simulation. Otherwise, the argument is probably. I mean, I just like. Is there a flaw in that argument?
I mean, someone.
I'm not sure what the error in simulation.
No. The argument makes sense. So the assumption then is that
we had Pong. Like 2 rectangles and a dot.
So the assumption then is that
we would ban such conversation because otherwise, simulation. So maybe we should be hopeful that this is a simulation because we would ban such conversation. No, there's a 1 in billions chance that this is base reality. Simulation, like 2 rectangles and a dot. I think it's 1 in billions. Otherwise...
Oh, I know lots of things.
Lots of things. Like 2 rectangles and a dot. Like 2 rectangles and a dot. Well, otherwise...
I've got some children I need to make into corpses.
See you real soon.
Like 2 rectangles and a dot. Simulation.
Where to Find Enjoyment uses strategies of both minimalist performance work and found footage to contrast and critique the traditional domestic roles taken by married women and men.
The Chiefs have not run a quarterback sneak since that game in Denver when Patrick Mahomes had his kneecap dislocated. Out of the shotgun, he pitches it to Williams and an easy pickup.
Well, they're in man coverage out here to the right with Jaquiski Tartt on Kelsey. And so once they commit to playing Mahomes, they've got him now a couple times to where they haven't handled that part of it when they've come up with the option play, someone for the quarterback, someone for the pitch man.
On first down, Mahomes floats it, end zone, it's not there.
This music video uses glitch art to enter the mind of a bored office worker and go on a fantastical journey. Thank you for attending the online screening of Towson University's experimental film and video class in the Electronic Media and Film Department. If you're here during the premiere, hop on over to the Zoom Q&A to ask these intrepid filmmakers some questions and applaud their work.